Hello. We've been following our character from Neverwinter, where he was hired by Gundren Rockseeker to escort a cart down south to the town of Phandalin. After a few days, his travel down the Tribor Trail has been blocked by a pair of dead horses in the middle of the road. It turned out to be an ambush that's been swiftly dispatched, and investigating the site gave some clues to where the goblins that set it up might be coming from. The spellcaster followed the tracks until he reached Cragmore Hideout, a system of caves within a hill infested by goblins. He spent a few days stomping them out and rescuing Silda Hallwinter, who accompanied Gundren on their way to Phandalin as they left for the old town ahead of time. The middle-aged man shared the informations about his and his friend's capture, the existence of Cragmore Castle, and why was the dwarf traveling to Phandalin in the first place. After the defeat of the goblin outpost, the characters spent just a few more days traveling to their destination. Avestrum utilized that time to switch out his firebolt for a ray of frost, thanks to cantrip formula written in his spellbook, and preparing fog cloud in place of grease. Now, with the wagon full of supplies, we arrive at the small city. The rutted track emerges from a wooded hillside, and the mage catches his first glimpse of Phandalin. The town consists of 40 or 50 simple log buildings, some built on old fieldstone foundations, more old ruins. Crumbling stone walls covered in ivy and briars surround the newer houses and shops, showing how this must have been a much larger town in centuries past. Most of the newer buildings are set on the side of the cart track, which widens into a muddy main street of sorts as it climbs towards a ruined manor house on a hillside at the east side of town. As the mage approaches, he sees children playing on the town green and townsfolk tending to chores or running errands at shops. Many people look up as he approaches, but all return to their business as he goes by. Silda seems much more at ease.
My friend, let us secure lodgings. I'm told the local inn is very quaint.
With these words, the fighter splits off and walks down the road, entering the tavern. The wizard quickly spots a sign saying Barthen's Provisions, rides in closer, jumps off the wagon, and enters the building. Inside, a lean and balding human male shopkeeper, equally old as Hallwinter, turns to the new customer and asks how can he be of service. I brought you the delivery from Neverwinter. As per agreement with Gundren Rockseeker, I am to be paid 40 gold pieces. You can take what's yours from the wagon, but I want to use it for a little while longer, if you don't mind. Elmar Barthen is happy to hear the news, and orders his two young clerks, Ander and Thistle, to start unloading the goods. He himself pays out the agreed upon amount, asking if there's anything else he can do. The younger man states that he's got some goods to sell, a bunch of jewelry and loads of arms and armor, but is told that the shop doesn't buy or sell any weapons, and that it would be the best to trade in the jade frog and the golden teeth at the miners' exchange down south. The necromancer then asks to exchange his load of copper and silver pieces into gold. Old Elmar wonders where Gundren might be, especially since Tharden and Nundro, his brothers, have camped somewhere outside the town recently. He hasn't seen them in a 10-day and expects them to return any day now to resupply. Avestrum considers the information and leaves the store. Outside, the young clerks have begun to unload the cart. Do you recognize the blue symbol on those chests by any chance? The man on the wagon confirms that it's a sign of the Lion Shield Costa, a merchant company that has its branch in Phandalin. He points the way down south and finishes unloading the supplies meant for the provisions. The mage informs the helpers that Barthen agreed to lend the cart for a little while longer and that he'll return it shortly, then climbs onto it and drives off south. He quickly reaches his destination. Hanging above the front door of this modest trading post is a sign shaped like a wooden shield with a blue lion painted on it. The wizard enters the building and meets a human woman in her 30s. I think I've found your delivery. Do you think you can compensate me for the effort? Linen Greywind admits she knows about the raids on the company's caravans, and her thanks are expressed with 50 gold pieces, and assurance that she'll help the adventurer in any way she can. I also have a bunch of arms and armor to sell, and I've heard you're buying. All the shield, bows, swords, arrows, and armor are sold for half the market value, fetching a hefty sum for the human male. For the sake of calculation, I assumed the goblins had more than one set of ammunition per person, and that all of it was able to be sold for full price per archer. With the trade concluded, Linen shares a word of advice. A ruffian band named Red Brands caused trouble for the town, and it's best to avoid the Sleeping Giant tap house, where they like to gather. Because of that, she doesn't do any business with them. Why didn't the guards deal with them then? The necromancer inquires. There aren't any, he hears in response. There aren't any. Who is the incompetent who runs this place? He continues the questioning. It's the town master, found in the hall. But it's the miners' exchange that pretty much does the bookkeeping and all the claims to profitable excavations in the area. Greywind explains. She adds that the business is closing for today as well, and that any more trade will be available from tomorrow's morning. The only thing left open in the town is the inn, for travelers like himself. Avestrum leaves the store and drives the cart back to Barthen's. The sun is nearing the horizon, as it's getting late, and the streets become emptier. In the center of town stands a large, newly built roadhouse of fieldstone and rough-hewn timbers. The common room is filled with locals nursing mugs of ale or cider, all of them eyeing the wizard with curiosity. He walks into the common room, looks around in search of the head of the establishment, and makes his way to the counter. The proprietor is a short, friendly young human male named Toblin Stonehill. He welcomes the newcomer to the place, giving him the brief of the menu for today as well. The necromancer rents a room for 5 silver pieces, finds himself an unoccupied chair, and sends his familiar off to a ledge above the common room to keep an ear out for any rumors. Soon Elsa, a gossipy barmaid, approaches him, saying, "I haven't seen you here before. Where do you come from?" "I'm from the Far East," the human male responds cryptically. "That sounds like a long way from home. What brings you here? Are you on an adventure?" Darren Edermath, the orchard keeper, is a former adventurer as well. I'm sure you two will have plenty to talk about. Can I get you anything? I'm looking for a Cragmore castle, or someone who knows where it is. I don't know where that might be, but I think Quelline Alderleaf might know someone. She seems so wise and is friends with some guy from outside the town. Maybe you'll learn something from talking to her. Anything else I can get you? That's all for now. I'll call if that changes. Very well. Have a good evening then. She replies and goes off to tend to another table. As the evening goes by, more locals arrive at the inn to socialize. Narth, an old farmer, tells his friends that Sister Garaele, who oversees the Shrine of Luck, recently left town for a few days, then returned wounded and exhausted. The innkeeper's wife, Trilena, joins a conversation while serving a different table and speaks up about Thel Dendar, a local woodcarver who stood up to the Red Brands a 10 days ago when they came by his shop and leered at his wife. The ruffians murdered him. Several townsfolk saw it happen. The Red Brands grabbed his body, and now his wife, daughter and son have gone missing too. Far in the corner of the room, Freda, a weaver, complains how the Red Brands hassle every business in town except for the Phandalin Miners' Exchange. They don't want trouble with Halia Thornton, who runs it. The man and his owl overhear the talking. With all the leads, they plan out a course of action for the next day and retreat to their room to rest. In the morning, the necromancer gathers his belongings and makes his way to the Miners' Exchange. The guildmaster Halia is also a human, who quickly gets to business with the newly arrived. As Avestrum lays down the treasure he's found so far, he strikes up a conversation. The prospectors from around here tell you about the digs they've found, don't they? Has any of them spoken about any castles? Cragmore castles in particular? Thornton quickly eyes the stranger up and down before responding. I might know something, but help isn't free. Of course it isn't. What would it cost to get it from you? The mage inquires, as his suspicion is risen. Quid pro quo is not a new concept. However, the people in town seemed more helpful so far. I have a favor to ask, but I don't think you can handle it. I can't. Well, then you should have asked someone from Phandalin to lend you a hand, shouldn't you have? And your problem should already have been solved. Seems to me at this point, anyone you don't know presents an opportunity and a chance to get the job done. So what have you got to lose? So eager to prove yourself? Fine. The Red Brands are a problem.
Those ruffians loiter around the sleeping giant tab house and have a base under Tresenda Manor on the east edge of town. I will pay you 100 gold pieces to eliminate the Red Brand leader whom the outlaws call Glassstaff, and bring me any correspondence found in the leader's quarters.
Halia seems like the only one willing to do something about the gang in town, but her reluctance to commission this task is odd. This time it's him who's eyeing her up and down, and telepathically communicates with his summoned spirit to look closely at her body language and the tone of voice. Working together, he makes an insight check that results in him catching on to some ulterior motives the guildmaster might have. Yes, I've heard about them already, but I've also heard, out of all people, you're not the one harassed. How come?
They seem to be smart enough not to mess with me.
Halia replies, smirking lightly.
So, will you do it?
Alright, but what about the Cragmore Castle?
I've heard the Red Brands have a goblin minion serving them. I suggest keeping your eye out once you infiltrate their hideout.
I'll let you know what I've found, the man states before exiting the miners' exchange. Visiting what passes for a mayor here is next in the order of business. It's just a little way back north. The necromancer passed through here a few times already, so he knows where to go. The town master's hall has sturdy stone walls, a pitched wooden roof, and a bell tower at the back. Posted on a board next to the front door is a notice written in common. It reads, "Reward, Orcs near Wyvern Tor. Those of a mind to face the Orc menace should inquire within." The notice bears the town's seal and an indecipherable signature. Harbin Wester, a fat male human banker, is the current elected official, whose office Avestrum reaches very easily. After knocking and being asked to come inside, the mage wastes no time and starts asking the hard questions. "I've heard there's a Red Brand issue in town. Why haven't you had the guards deal with them?"
Oh, it's just a mercenary guild and not at all that much trouble, really. If anything, it's them who keeps the place in order.
I see. Tell me about the pamphlet on the board outside, and why haven't the Red Brands dealt with it then?
They prefer staying here and keeping us safe from troublemakers. But I'm looking for someone to head east to the Tribor Trail, where travelers have reported trouble with a band of orcs near Wyvern Tor. I'm offering 100 gold pieces to any group that can take care of the problem.
Very well. I'll take you up on the offer and report any progress I make.
Oh, splendid, splendid. Please just don't cause any trouble,
says the town master nervously as he shows his supplicant out of the office. In the building's hall, the wizard stumbles across Sildar again, who pays him the promised amount, thanking him again for the help in the caves, restating that as an agent of the Lords' Alliance, his goal is to bring law and order to Phandalin by reopening the mines. To that end, Hallwinter asks to keep up the pressure on the goblins by finding the Cragmore Castle, getting rid of their chieftain, and bringing back Gundren. This will render the area way safer and allow the Rockseeker brothers to begin the operation in Wave Echo Cave. For completing these tasks, 500 gold pieces is offered as reward. The fighter also suggests the younger man might find the castle by searching the lands around the Tribor Trail for more raiding parties. Sildar also confesses that after questioning several locals, he learns that Iarno Albrecht, a fellow member of the Lords' Alliance, disappeared while exploring the area around Tresenda Manor about 2 months ago, shortly after arriving in Phandalin. With that, Hallwinter asks to investigate the manor and the surrounding area to find and bring back Iarno, or what's left of him, if something killed him. He describes the man as short, dark-bearded human wizard in his 30s. There is some compensation for that effort as well, I presume?
Don't worry, my friend. You won't be shortchanged on that.
The fighter shakes the necromancer's hand with a smile. The trouble in the area keeps piling up, and with what Avestrum heard last evening from the barmaid, there is a man in town who's ought to have dealt with it all already. The mage makes his way to the Ethermath orchard to gather some more information. He finds the silver-haired, fit elf in the garden and announces his presence. "Hello. You must be Darren, the adventurer. I've arrived in town recently and heard about the troubles the locals are facing. I figured someone like you would know more details."
"What makes you think I'm an adventurer?"
The barmaid babbled it out.
"Of course she did. Who are you then? Am I to take that you're planning on helping the folks?
They do offer the pay, so I do offer my services.
It's about time someone taught the Red Brand's ruffians a lesson and took a stand against their leader, Glassstaff. I know they hang around Sleeping Giant's tap house, but you could find their main safe house under Tresenda Manor, the ruin at the east edge of town.
I also saw an open task about orcs in Wyvern Tor on the bulletin board in front of the townmaster's hall, only I don't really know where that is. Have you got any more detailed maps of the area, or could you perhaps mark it on mine?
I think I do. Just wait a moment. Let me see what I can find.
With these words, Darren leaves for his house and shortly returns with the promised map.
I would also have a favor to ask of you.
Surely. Are you paying though?
I can't promise anything, but if you would be so kind as to investigate a certain matter for me and the inhabitants.
And what would that be?
I've heard stories from prospectors in the hills northeast of Phandalin that someone is digging around in the ruins known as Old Owl Well. More disturbingly, several prospectors have reported being chased from the area by undead. Please, visit the ruins and find out who's there and what they are up to. It's 2 days march northeast from Phandalin. That spot is already marked on the map as well. I can also tell you that the ruins are an old watchtower of an ancient magical empire known as Netheril, and I worry that dangerous magic might be dormant there.
Netheril, you've piqued my interest. Hopefully there'll be someone in town willing to compensate me for the effort. So there is this gang terrorizing the town, orc raiding parties up on the trail, and a horde of undead apparently not far off. Considering your past, why haven't you dealt with it all?
I'm not a sellsword anymore, but someone in their prime should be able to take care of it.
With how worried you seem about those people, one would think you have a moral obligation to do something to help.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I could join you then. Together we'd have greater chances of dealing with those depredations.
You've had your chance to act, and if you couldn't, I won't babysit weaklings and hypocrites. With these words, the wizard turns back and heads to the main road, leaving Darren stumped. However, as he heads back into the street, he sees 4 armed ruffians waiting for him. All of them are humans wearing grimy red cloaks, their hands on their weapons as they watch him. One of the ruffians spits on the ground.
Time for you to move on, stranger. Give us your stuff and be on your way.
Will our anti-hero talk his way out of this? Would he be able to survive the confrontation? What other issues plague the town of Phandalin? All this will be answered in the next episode of True Solo D&D. In the meantime, share these videos around and subscribe to the channel for an advantage on spot checks to notice the next release.